We're honored to have Nidia Bautista here. She's the policy director for the Coalition for Clean Air, and she's currently spearheading the organizational efforts on inland trucking, coordinating the statewide environmental health and legislative working group, advancing community protection and benefits via AB 32, and many, many, many other things that I'm not even going to read here. Bottom line, Nidia is an amazing advocate, does great outreach and education, and I'm really honored, Mike, that she agreed to be our first guest here today. Nidia, hello. How are you today?
Hi, John and Mike. I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks so much for having me on.
Hey, Nidia, when I moved here, I married a Valley girl in 1985, and I moved here in 1996, and I was visiting my in-laws in between, and I thought, I made a mistake. I made a great choice to marry my wife. That's not the mistake.
Yeah, you got to be clear about that, John.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's not the mistake. But I had a mistaken belief that because I saw all this beautiful farmland and my in-laws were in the agricultural industry, that this was sort of like the cleanest of clean of everything, including, of course, the air. Nidia, why was I so wrong? Where did I go wrong?
Yeah, that's a common mistake, actually. So don't punish yourself too much there.
Tell me a couple reasons. What happened? Tell me a couple reasons.
Unfortunately, the valley there's a couple of things. One is its geography. It's shaped just like a bowl. You have mountain ranges on both sides, and you have stagnant air oftentimes. And then you have an abundance of sun and heat, which unfortunately are really good for forming ozone and smog. And so that combined with the abundance of air pollution sources, I think, anyone who's either lived or driven by the valley knows all too well that there are so many heavy-duty diesel trucks there. Obviously, lots of cars, because there's lots of people there, and more people have come into the region over the last decade or so. On top of that, you mentioned farming, and agriculture is another primary source of air pollution in the region as well. So you have this combination of a geography that's shaped like a bowl where the air gets trapped, and a lot of air pollution sources in the region. So again, you're not the only one to make that mistake, but the realities are it's the most polluted region in the nation, along with Southern California.
I mean, it's just amazing. Mike, do you have any family members that have asthma or suffer from this bad air here?
No, I don't, John, but I'll tell you what, I was born and raised in Southern California, grew up in the San Gabriel Valley, which is in the L.A. basin.
Right.
And so I thought, well, I'll come up to Fresno. So I mean,
you made the same.
I was kind of thinking that maybe, I'm out of L.A. and the air is going to be better. But towards the asthma question, though, Nidia, this is a statistic when I first moved up here that just kind of blew me away, that 1 out of every 4 children born here in the San Joaquin Valley develops asthma.
Yeah, and actually I have some bad news for you. Unfortunately, the latest figures are it's 1 out of every 3 children in Fresno County.
And my son's part of the statistics, and it's no fun at all. Nidia, what's going on today? Like, we have listeners out there that really understand that the green revolution is here to stay, and they want to get educated, but they also want to become part of the solution. Please, can you help enlighten them a little bit and give them some of the solutions that are out there for instance, the farmers who really created this great community? What incentives out there are there for them in terms of upgrading their equipment and doing other things?
Yeah, well, the good news is that there's lots to do on that front. So, though it is a scary situation, the reality is that there's a lot that people can do on an individual level, and even, as you mentioned, businesses and the farming community can participate. And government's there to both try to push us to get to that cleaner place, but also to help, these businesses get there. So just in your own home, if you can, turn off the lights when you don't need them, because a lot of that is created by burning coal, and that's stirring up the air in certain regions. Driving less, that's probably the number one thing that we can all do. To the extent we can minimize our driving, we're burning less fuel, we're creating less pollution into the air. If you can walk there, if you can bike there, if you can take the bus there, we would all be a whole lot better if we're all doing a little bit more of that each day. And then for businesses, you mentioned incentives for them, and I'm not going to tell you that there's money for everybody, because there isn't, but there are some pots of money out there, and folks can access that funding through their local air district, through the state itself, and that's both for farmers, but also even for the truckers, and even to help people get rid of their old cars if their cars aren't passing the smog test. And then recently, with the federal government's coming in with this economic stimulus, and it's all about green. And while cleaning up our air has been something that California's been doing for a long time, and we're that's not a green revolution, I don't know what else is. So there's immediate things that we can do to purchase equipment that will actually reduce pollution, whether it's electrifying our equipment or putting traps so that we're not emitting toxic pollution into the air. So there's lots of funding out there, and if folks would like to access that, they're welcome to contact us, and we can connect them to the right places.
Well, Nidia, too, when we're talking about some of these investments in new technology, there's an initial outlay of capital, not only for business, but when people think, well, okay, what I want to do is I want to go solar. There's an initial outlay to get the solar panels and all of that. But what about the immediate savings that can be realized? Because let's face it, everybody is trying to save a buck as well as, save the environment.
That's right, and I think that's exactly it. Sometimes it means that we have to pay a little bit more up front, but ultimately we can see those savings in the long term. And that may not be the case for everything that we're doing, but it is for many of the new technologies that are coming on board. And I say new, but in reality they've been here for a while. And I think it's this type of effort to really get them out there to the community, get them out there to the businesses. And I think that the federal government is really encouraging that at this front. But we can all do more, and I think if folks are interested in learning more specifically about things in their home or their own businesses, again, we're welcome to be a resource for them.
What's your website address so people can actually access it when they're listening or right after they listen to the show? What's your best point of entry for your organization?
Great. So if folks are calling in from the San Joaquin Valley, we have office in Fresno, and that number is 559-486-3279. And on the web, it's a long web address, but it's www.coalition4cleanair.org. And we have information on our website as well, including our contact information for all of our offices.
Mike, we'll post that on our website, huh?
Yeah, we can do that on the website, and all you have to do is go to KRDU1130.com, and it will all be there. Nidia, what kind of information is available, though, on that website? Any money-saving tips, things that people can do immediately in their own homes?
Absolutely, and we have some facts on air pollution, top 10 facts, and then a couple of things that they can do, including things like replacing your light bulbs, turning off your lights, driving less, and then also if you want information about your local public transportation system, and then to learn more about what it costs to drive your car, we have information about that as well. And if you're interested in looking and are looking to purchase a new car, there's a link there as well to see if you can purchase the cleanest, greenest car that you can afford.
Hey, Nidia, what are the top things today that you're working on right now, real time, to help the air get cleaner here in California? What are you working on in Sacramento with our legislators and our lawmakers?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is, heavy-duty diesel trucks. We want to make sure that there's funding out there for our truck drivers to get them the cleanest equipment, and we're pushing the state to adopt health protective regulations that will protect all California residents from this toxic pollution. We're also working to clean up the farming industry that was mentioned, and that includes things like the equipment that's being used. A lot of these tractors, are running on some of the dirtiest fuel, and we want to make sure that those get cleaned up as well, and that we're helping the farming community do that. A lot of people don't know, but another major source of air pollution in the state is actually consumer products, things like cleaners and shampoos and hairsprays, things that we have in our home that a lot of times are under our kitchen sink, and those actually contribute to the smog problem in the state as well. And so we're trying to make sure that when we go into the supermarket, that we have a lot of choices, cost-effective, cleaner, greener products that won't contribute to the air pollution. And then, the state is really looking to move forward with reducing global warming, and we think that that's, the climate crisis is an issue in California as much as it is anywhere else. And we want to make sure that our neighborhoods, especially those neighborhoods that are have the least resources and are the most impacted by air pollution, are equipped to deal with that problem. So we're pushing for some legislation on that front, and that's AB 1405. And that's just some of the things that we're working on.
Okay, well, Nidia, I tell you, there's more that we got to talk about, but unfortunately, we're going to have to take a quick break, so give us just a couple of minutes, and if you can hang on, we'll get back to you and find out some more of the things, and like to talk a little bit more about some of those cleaning products, too. That was amazing. We'll have more with Nidia coming up right after this on Green is Good.
If a little green is good, more is even better. Now, back to Green is Good with John Shigarian and Mike Brady.
With us still on the line is Nidia Bautista from the Coalition for Clean Air, and we're here in studio with Mike Brady. And Nidia, welcome back, and Mike, welcome back.
Well, thank you, guys. And Nidia, just before we went into the break, we were talking about the connection between the valley air and bad air quality, and the fact that I had quoted a statistic that I'd first learned when I'd moved up here from Los Angeles, that 1 in 4 children born in the San Joaquin Valley would develop asthma. And you shared an even worse statistic on that with us.
Yeah, unfortunately, the latest figures are for Fresno County in particular. Children at 17 years or younger, it's 1 in 3.
Wow.
So if you can imagine, it's every third child that you see in Fresno County, is having to carry an inhaler.
And you know it's true because we moved back here in 96, and my son just developed asthma just in the last 3 years. He's 16 years old. He's 6'3", and he's a healthy young man. But the asthma caught up with him. The air caught up with him here, and as a teenager, he developed the asthma.
Well, and John, you know that as a parent with a child with asthma, that oftentimes that means they'll miss several days of school because of it, and then sometimes that means the parents have to miss work as well. So there's an economic toll associated with it too.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I just have to also, Nidia, you're just amazing on how you talk about all these issues. And I just want to throw a little disclaimer in here. It's because of great people like Nidia and the Coalition for Clean Air being such a great organization. I actually joined the board about a year and a half ago, so I am on the board, and I wanted our listeners to know that because I believe so much in this cause and this issue being our number one issue. If we don't have clean air, we don't have anything. Nothing good is going to go for us if we're going to continue to destroy the air. Nidia, hope. Give us some hope. Like, what are some communities that have turned their air quality around? I understand Mexico City has turned their air quality around, or other cities are doing great things to turn their air quality around. What's the hope for the Central Valley?
Yeah, so we actually don't have to travel too far away. I think that Southern California, though the air is still not fully clean there, there's still a long way to go. The realities are that we've come a long way. I think anybody that was living in Southern California, especially near the Los Angeles area, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, can recall just how bad the air was there. And since those days, I think we've made tremendous progress.
You're absolutely right, Nidia. While we were in the break, we were talking off air, and it turns out that you and I both grew up down in the L.A. area, and we were comparing notes about how when we were kids, how bad the air is. But since we've been back, while the air is still bad in Southern California, there are fewer smog days, and you can really see some improvement in the air quality. Yeah,
you can actually see the mountains on some days.
Yeah, those mountains we saw as kids that kind of disappeared by the time we got into high school, they seem to be making a comeback, huh?
That's right. And, it didn't just happen overnight. It took a long time, but a couple of things that worked seemed to be, one, the government was really focused in on ensuring that there would be solutions. And so they passed regulations, and some of which, they weren't very popular at the time. But what resulted was people changed their behaviors. I mean, it used to be really common practice that people would burn their trash in their backyard. And people had incinerators in their backyards. And, the idea that you would take away people's incinerators was you just wouldn't even think of that. But because of the air pollution problem, that was one of the things that people did away with in Southern California, and people aren't complaining about that anymore.
It's funny that you mention that, because just the other night I had a dream. You know how dreams are, and all of a sudden I was a little kid about 5 years old, and I was back in the house I grew up in West Covina, and there it was. We did have one of those trash incinerators right behind our garage, and I remember taking the trash out, and I couldn't wait to be able to be trusted with matches to set the stuff on fire, but that's all gone now.
That's right. And, the San Joaquin Valley is taking steps. They were the first region in the state to actually have residents limit their use of their fireplaces, which, we all love the idea of the fireplace. It's a very romantic spot, and, I think we all have memories of using the fireplaces, but that's something San Joaquin Valley residents have stepped up, and they said, we're going to limit our use of it. We'll use it on some days, but when the air is really bad, we're not going to use it on those days. So there's hope in that regard. And then on the business side and industry side, and even on the use of our cars, especially Southern California is another good example where you have the auto industry, fighting tooth and nail to get to be forced to clean up their engines, and the same way that they fought over the seat belts. But now we know that there's technologies that came into place, like the catalytic converter, and that helped reduce pollution from cars tremendously.
Hey, how about, we were talking about cost benefit to people and then to the economy and then also to the bottom line. How about hybrids? Are you seeing more hybrids up in Sacramento? Down here in Fresno, we're seeing more hybrids on the road. We have 10 hybrids at our company, Electronic Recyclers, in terms of our salespeople are driving hybrids, and the return on investment is very, very strong. What do you see out there with regards to car manufacturing and the use and the purchasing of hybrids?
Yeah, definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head there, John. I think, hybrid use and consumers' desire for them have increased tremendously. One thing I always talk to people about, not necessarily everybody can afford a hybrid, for personal use.
Right.
But certainly people can afford, there are other cleaner versions out there. They may not be the hybrid, but it could be, basically, if you see a tag where it says lower emission vehicle or partial zero emission vehicle. There's other cars out there too that also don't emit as much as some of the other models.
Hey, Nidia.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, Earth Day is coming up in a couple of days, and really, hopefully, people take it as inspiration to live a better and cleaner and greener way the whole year, not just on Earth Day. But what events is your organization, the CCA, involved with regards to Earth Day that people can get involved with, or people can find information or inspiration from?
I love that you said it's not just that one day, because you're right. It's really a commitment throughout the year. But definitely, there's actually lots of Earth Day events happening throughout the state, and our organization's involved in some in Fresno, in the San Joaquin Valley, in Southern California, and in Sacramento. They can get that information on our website, but there's also a lot of other communities that are having events, and folks should try to plug into those events as well.
Gotcha. Which event are you going to? What's your favorite event that's going to be up in Sacramento?
Well, I'll be participating in the Southside Park event. It's the largest Earth Day event here in Sacramento, and that's coming up on the 26th of this month.
That's great. That is just so awesome. And Nidia, is there any other thoughts or any other green tips that you want to give our listeners before we say goodbye today?
Yeah, I appreciate that. One last one that I missed, which is spread the word. This is all good news we need to be sharing with folks about things that they can do, and I think the more we get that message out there, the better. And that's why I really appreciate, John and Mike, both of your time and the opportunity to be here to speak to your listeners.
Well, we appreciate you, and we appreciate all that you're doing with the Coalition for Clean Air, which is the best and the biggest advocacy organization with regards to clean air in California. And it was an honor to have you as our first guest, Nidia.
Thank you both.
Oh, John, that was some great information, and what a great guest for the first show. Nidia Bautista, the policy director of the Coalition for Clean Air, and taking some time out to talk to us all the way from Sacramento today.
Oh, wonderful lady, wonderful organization. It's just a great way to kick off our show, Mike.
And the thing is that while the statistics about 1 in every 3 children being born in the San Joaquin Valley developing asthma by the time they're 17, that's a daunting statistic, but the good news is, and Nidia was able to share a lot of hopeful information about in places where people have really worked together and banded together as a community, they have begun to reverse bad air quality.
The change begins with us,
and
we can be the solution, and that's the great part about this show. We want to offer information to our listeners so they can become the change.
And it's really true, because everybody doing just a little bit, but everybody doing a small part, that is where the change begins. And I thought one of the things that I found most fascinating about our time with Nidia, talking about the contributing factors to the bad air quality here in the valley, of course, we think about the geography, the fact that we're in a bowl. It's a valley, the big valley, just like the TV show. Well,
right.
That's where we are. But there is the diesel exhaust up and down 99 and 41 and on the 5. There's that. There's our own cars. So what we can do is drive less, keep our cars properly tuned, inflate our tires, get better gas mileage, so we're being more fuel efficient that way. But also the fact that there are things that ag businesses can do to help decrease the pollutants put in the air, but also under our sinks, our cleaning products. That was fascinating.
Yeah, we always talk about the usual suspects, and then we find a little information out about things that we weren't even thinking about. It is. You're right.
And some of the things, the really cool thing is when we start to think about what we do and the actions and the consequences of those actions, we start thinking about it, we can make better choices. And in so doing, we can save ourselves money, too. That's the thing I really like. You tune the engine on your car, better gas mileage. Gas isn't getting a whole lot cheaper, kids.
No, use both sides of the paper in your office when you're making notes. In fact, don't print every email that you get.
Yeah, how many of them are really necessary to print?
Very few.
Oh,
really, very few, Mike.
There's some other things, too. Okay, you talk about that. Another tip. I mean, a lot of people, I know, I've done it, and I like online banking. That is so cool. Don't have to get the statements in the mail. I'm thinking, boy, if everybody did that, would our letter carriers feel better? Those guys and gals with the back problems, they don't have to carry all that extra paper.
Yeah, and if for those who aren't great with computers or technology's not their thing, get your kids to get you onto online banking. Like my daughter registered my wife and myself for online banking. So it really does work. It's actually very quick, and you don't have to even rely on the U.S. mail. You press a send button and you've paid your bills.
Yeah, isn't that amazing how the kids can teach us all about computers? I mean, that's like we learned, how to turn on a radio switch or a television dial or flip a light switch, and that's our technology. Our kids are come on, get into the 21st century, Dad.
Our kids are twittering, and we don't even know what's happening.
Another thing, too, when we talk about how easy it is to save energy. Cell phones. Most everybody's got a cell phone.
Yep.
How long does it take to charge your cell phone?
Oh, maybe half hour tops.
Yeah, how many of us, and I will raise my hand because I'll do this before I go to bed at night, plug it in and leave it charging overnight. It doesn't need to be done that way.
And Mike, no pun intended, but I'm also guilty as charged on that count. So I'm embarrassed to tell you I am also guilty on that count.
Another thing, too, while we're talking about phones, maybe we could think about canceling our phone book delivery. Do you ever think about that?
Who uses a phone book now with Google?
Yeah, I think one of these days it's going to be a museum piece. Remember these things? Yeah, you know how many trees it took to put a phone book on everybody's front porch? But you're right, again with a computer. Yeah. Or even, calling information, 411. There you go.
Yeah.
Just a lot of ways that we can save an awful lot of energy. And by doing so, we're not polluting our air. As Nidia said, she's talking about the coal-fired plants that produce the electricity that we use and come to rely on every day. Well, it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And the other thing is we got to listen. And I'm going to give you an example, Mike, of listening. It was about 3 years ago. We were at the dinner table, and it was a summertime, and my son, he was working in our factory at Electronic Recyclers, and said, "Son, how was your work?" He said, "Dad, I love working here. I love being in the factory, and I love taking the stuff apart and being part of the process here." But he says, "I have to tell you the truth." I said, "Well, what do you mean the truth?" He said, "I don't feel good. Halfway through the day, I get nauseous a little bit." I said, "Nauseous?" I mean, I really was I was thrown out. I never had heard this from any of our employees. We have a couple hundred employees. Here my son was speaking up. He said the forklifts in the facility were throwing off such bad emissions that it would get trapped in the facility and make him feel nauseous halfway through the day.
Well, that makes a lot of sense when you stop and think about it. If you're working inside a warehouse, if you've ever done any kind of warehouse work, and gas operated, that makes sense.
And it was because of that idea, that seed that he planted. We did some investigation and actually went out to bid, and we got all electric forklifts, and every employee have thanked the management team at our company because it's improved the quality of workplace. And I guarantee if our listeners listen to their employees, or for that matter, their children or other family members, they can find changes that they can make right now in their homes and in their businesses that will have profound and great effects both on their life and their quality of life, but also probably on their bottom line.
Well, that's really what it's talking about is sustainability, people, planet, and profits.
Hey,
No reason we can't save a buck or even make some money, the whole green collar economy.
Hey, Mike, I'm so glad you brought that up, because the truth is, as we were talking about with Nidia, most of the changes you're going to make are going to have bottom line ramifications that are going to increase your bottom line, both in your quality of life and in your business enterprise in terms of profitability.
That makes sense. It makes so much sense. And of course, when we talk about it, KRDU is all about radio that changes lives.
Yeah.
And we're talking about stewardship here. And it's just good common sense, and it's good stewardship, taking care of the planet that we all share. Okay, with Earth Day coming up this week, we hope you celebrate, and just remember that we can all make a change. Just one little change in our own lives every day. That can become a habit, and done together, we can really make a difference.
Oh, yeah. And next week, Mike, we have Bob Epstein on, and he's the head of E2, and he's the founder of E2, which is Environmental Entrepreneurs. And he's going to be giving us tips on how to become part of the green revolution in terms of if you want to be starting a green business, and also help create the green collar workforce.
I love it. Saving the planet and making some money at the same time. It works for me.
Oh, it's great. And for some green tips, I want our listeners to go to krdu1130.com, and remember always that green is good.
This program will be available for downloading in a couple of days at krdu1130.com. Keyword podcast. Thanks for listening, and join us again next week at this time for another edition of Green is Good.